Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Aaron. So I will be the MC for today webinar, and also I will be sharing on the presentation topic. So let me just go through the agenda for today. So first session that Dr. Istiana, I think we are quite privileged to have Dr. Istiana to deliver the first session about strategic business value of digital enterprise architecture. I believe that most of us already hear about MyGov EA, which is the journey on the total transformation of Malaysian government in terms of adopting the right technology to drive business value, to increase a citizen value within the country, as well as enhance the business practices among the government with various entities, with the businesses, with the citizen enhancement, so that we all have a better life in our journey towards advanced developed nation. Then after that, I'll be sharing a little bit on the concept on the citizen journey mapping. Then after that, will be followed by the real case study that will be presented by Encik Hassan Ghani. Then at the end, we will do a Q&A session to address any question that you might have in regards to the topics that has been shared. So without further ado, we would like to welcome Dr. Istiana. I think it's not first time you hear about her name and also her profile, and also her passion in terms of sharing about what is so-called the strategic business value of the enterprise architecture adoption among the public sectors in Malaysia. So with that, I hand over the session to Dr. Istiana.
Hello everyone. Hello everyone. A very good afternoon. Some of the participant is part of EA team as well. So I welcome to all the participants in this webinar. My topic today will be on the strategic business value, but I will be presenting on the directions of the digital government, what we need to do and how we're going to do it in the next 5 years. So I share my screen. Okay, I will be covering on how we go about the digital transformation for the public sector, the business value of the government, and how we are leveraging the digital EA to achieve the digital transformations. Just a recap, in the context of Malaysian government, the digital government has been defined as government design and operated to take advantage of digital data. So the keyword here is digital data. So in the next 5 years, we are going to see the difference on how data can give to the service delivery, and also how it will enhance the digital economy, as mentioned in shared prosperity visions and also RMK 12 development plan. Yeah. So it's actually part of what we have done before in RMK 11, but in this 5 years plan, what we do is actually we try to facilitate in terms of how to boost up the digital economy. So the digital government is focused more on the intelligence of the data and how we give the services seamlessly to the citizen, business community, and also other government's agency. So how do we go about digital transformations? These are what OECD mentions about digital transformations. Yeah, there are 3 stages that we have to go through before we can all as transform organizations or country. Yeah. So the first phase is digitization. As of we know before this, what we call it as ICT or automations. So information-based services we have done to make sure that the services given internally and externally to be more effective and efficient. So we are talking about speed, we are talking about robust, we are talking about digital data or electronic services. Yeah. So we have multiple channels now, and we automate all our processes, and we build the resilient infrastructure. But for the next 5 years, we are moving towards digitalization in Malaysian context. We are not yet mature enough to be called as a digital society. Yeah? So we call it digital government. Yeah, digitalization to meet the digital government. So it focuses more on the target groups, organizations, and also industry. So when we are talking about digitalization, we're talking about digitalization of manufacturing industry, health, educations, and so on. Yeah. So what we need to do here is the change of how we actually design the services to meet the target audience. Yeah. The business processes and the emerging technologies that we have to focus on. So the next phase that we have to achieve is actually, we call it digital society, whereby when we talk about digital society, as of now, we are still in early emergence of, for example, like cashless society. Yeah? We are embarking on the e-wallet. We are embarking on the mobile apps. We are embarking on the gig economy platform, which is more like e-commerce, right? So that is actually towards achieving the digital society. So in the Malaysian context, digital government goals, we can say we have 4 goals that we have to meet. The first one is to modernize the digital public services to be more integrated, and we are focusing on the live event of citizen, business community, and we try to come up with end-to-end services as much as we can. And if it's not end-to-end, it must be available online. So that is the first target, yeah? First goal. The second one is on innovative offering, meaning to say that when we digitalize our business processes or services, we are not only transforming from analog to digital, but what we need to do is to look into the environment and the ecosystem of the services so that we work together with our partners, strategic partners, on the offering the services in terms of, for example, like the value chain of supply and demand, or the value chain of certain processes for permits, for licensing, things like that. So that is what we need to do to change the way that we give services. So it includes being using some of the emerging technologies or fourth IR technologies. Yeah. So the third one is to ensure the value of government digital service investment. Know that every initiative must have certain investment. So what we do is to optimize this investment, we need to know what is the impact that we get when we get from the investment that we do. For example, if we have an investment in terms of infrastructure, then the way that we design the service investment must be impacted towards who are the target group that will be using, so that the adoption will be high. And in terms of how we identify the behavior of our target group, for example, like age group, we know that the current baby boomers will be phased out. So we have to focus on which age group that we are going to serve within the next 5 or 10 years. So that's how we design it upfront. Yeah. And the last one, the fourth one is to realize the cost optimization. Of course, this is actually looking into how we implement projects or how we optimize our resources in terms of consolidated services or in terms of controlling some of the technology that we are using, so that interoperability is the utmost in our initiatives. And at the same time, we are considering the requirement and the needs of accountability of each agency in terms of the data, in terms of the security, in terms of the transparency of each processes and services. So to meet these goals, 3 focus areas that we are looking. I think everyone knows about this, but which areas that we are focusing on each of the focus area. So for example, in terms of people, we are looking into the digital talent. When we are locking some talent to certain solutions, then what the government needs to do is actually build this talent. For example, if we are looking into, for example, like today we need a manager of APIs, right? So API need to be managed, whether we have a talent internally or externally or outside or in the industry to actually being the manager of API, for example. So maybe as of now, we need to know who are the chief of data officer for health, for example. So this kind of talent need to be groomed and built within the organization or in the public sector so that we can sustain. The second one is on the process. So in terms of process now, we are still in an automation, but don't look in automation as an all way we are doing things of automation. We should look into the hyper automation whereby by using the automation with the data, with the intelligent device, so that the automation process is actually more intelligent than the automation, the old days of automations. So with these services, what we can do is actually looking into the, still we call it business process re-engineering, or maybe some innovation in terms of how we promote the data sharing, and also in terms of looking back into our legislations and procedures to change so that the intelligence between services and automation can happen. The third one is on technology. So in terms of technology, we can adopt some emerging technologies, for example, like nowadays we are looking into IoT is a must. Blockchain, we're not very sure yet. But in terms of biometrics, in terms of digital ID, we already embark and start using it at this moment. So what do we need to do for the next 5 years? We have to take on which technology that we're going to adopt. Of course, whatever we do, we have to align at the global levels. So the global goals that we are aligning, if we are looking into RMK 12 and also our strategic plan, digital strategic plan, is on SDG. So definitely in terms of SDG, every goals, the 17 goals, every goals have each niche area that we are looking into. That's why what we need to do is to reform the governance. As of now, recently government have come out with a new governance in terms of a digital economy and fourth IR. We already have a majlis fourth IR and digital economy that chaired by PM. So within this governance, there are 6 clusters that we identify to meet all the needs of every trust that we have in the WKD, in the shared prosperity. So another one that we need to align is national goals, which is shared prosperity. We call it WAWASAN KEMAKMURAN BERSAMA. So there are 3 things that shared prosperity brings to us, which is development for all, addressing wealth and income disparities. What does it mean to us? It means that we have to look into all the different target groups, and all this information or services that we give to them shouldn't be segmented into agencies based. It should be seamless so that they can have the information in one form to get the message right. So for example, we also looking into the enablers of the shared prosperity, as I mentioned just now. When we come up with the trust in RMK 12, we are looking into how we can embed all these enablers in the plan. Yeah. So one thing that we can see here that directly with digital is big data. So in terms of the big data, what we do is actually, if we familiar with EA, MyGov EA, we have 4 domains, right? Business, data, application, and technology. So the data is actually transcend from the business process, from the beginning, from the recent process until towards to the technology level. Yeah, we have to look into all this age group and target group, and also the visions of WKB to make sure that whatever initiative that we do in digitalization will complement this vision. So in 12 mission plan, these are the 7 trusts that they identify that complement to the WKB. So 3 areas that WKB has mentioned is economic, social, and also environment. So in these 3 areas, the 7 trusts, if we look into it, we can actually map to what we have done now, 18 cluster area that we identify. So some of it is not actually specific to one area, it's actually inclusive of multiple areas that we have to look. For example, like kesejahteraan rakyat, we are talking not only about the social aspect of health, education, but we're also talking about the safety and the safety net. Yeah. So how do we transform from e-government to digital government? This is the hardest part when we have the mindset of electronics or automation of e-services. We are still talking about e-services somehow. But when we design these services, I call it these services, digital services, we have to design in the form that the change of design in terms of the mindset change, right? For example, now we are acting like a service provider. If you want our service, you come to us. That is what we told our client. But in digital government, we are playing a role as a platform or a facilitator, whereby if you have any issues or you have to interact with the government, please use this platform so that you can have seamless services using this platform. For example, what we have now is malaysia.gov.my. So opendata.gov.my. So within that platform, we can actually reach to the client or the citizen or the business community in one single services. Rather than multiple services, you have to go to multiple sites or multiple gateways. So to do this, there are lots of change implications that we need to do. For example, now we already have a mandate from our prime ministers. So then it cascades down into all the agencies' governance in terms of how we implement the digitalization from the root. So from here, what we need to actually change the way that we do things is in terms of understanding the different roles that we are playing to achieve the digital government. These are the innovation that we need to do, rather than the physical innovation that we can see is more influence. Yeah? So what are the business value that government are looking at? From all the alignment of visions, we have come out with a digital ecosystem framework. So as I mentioned just now, the national goals and the global goals is SDG and shared prosperity. And this is meant for RMK12, whereby we are actually facilitating the digital economy peers. Yeah. So in this framework, when we mention that we facilitate, it actually starts from what is the requirement in the digital economy? What are the changes that we need to focus on in digital economy? So some of it, if we are looking into it, is more, as I mentioned just now, towards data and also intelligence. Of course, trust is the security and trust is built in, yeah. So we are not looking into one players as different players, but we're looking into as one players. So government have a role, industry have a role, the academia have a role, even the citizen and civil society have a role. So in all this, understanding all these roles, there should be a digital governance, as I mentioned just now, a different governance in terms of how we structure it from the PM layers to the implementers, and what are the regulations and policies that we need to build to facilitate and ensure that the implementation is going smoothly. And all those plans will be materialized through the strategic intent. So the digitalization strategy that we have now for the next 5 years, focusing on all these 5 areas. So in implementing digital government, the focus area need to be looked into one by one, so that we are focused in the implementations. Of course, we adopt the governance principles and all the enabling environments to make sure that the implementation runs smoothly. So this framework is actually the framework that we are referring to when we aligning the goals and to achieve the shared prosperity mission. So with all those requirement and the framework, we come up with the strategy focus for the digital government for the next 5 years. So in these visions, what we try to achieve is to facilitate more towards a sustainable digitalization to achieve the digital society. So from here, we can see that we have 5 thrusts. From the thrust, the first thrust, we are talking about the first thrust, we are talking about the data, about the intelligence of the data. Not only the data, but the intelligence of the data. So here we are focusing on how to structure the data governance and also the data management, so that the accountability of the data sharings and also to facilitate the platform of data sharing. So in here, what we need to change within these 5 years is agency have to prepare that their roles of handling data will be different, and their roles in terms of collecting data will be different. The second trust is on the end-to-end services, or we call it inclusive or integrated services. So here we are looking into cluster services and also some specific horizontal and vertical services. So in terms of the target group, kumpulan SASA, we're also looking into a different or personalized services to the target group. The third one is on the governance. So we need to be agile in governing the digitalization, whether it is from the business perspective or it's from the government perspective, because there are lots of partnership will be happening between public and private, especially in terms of the digital industry that are growing for the next 5 years. And the fourth trust is on the talent. Yeah. So this is, we are not only talking about the technical talent, but we also talking about the talent or the competency of the whole of public sector machinery. Yeah? So we need to build in terms of the digital leaders, we call it, to digital leaders in terms of every niche area. For example, digital leaders for education, digital leaders for manufacturing, digital leaders. So we need to know who are actually lead them to the digitalization phases. So from here, what we can see is actually translated into the structure of the governance when we have 6 different clusters of the governance. The talents, the cluster of that cluster for talent services, cluster for infrastructure and data, cluster for socials, for the government, and also cluster for safety. The fifth trust is on the optimization of digital resources, or we call it shared services. For example, like what we have now, the infrastructure for the government, like cloud, communications, network, and many more. So we are talking about how all this interconnection between Trust 1 to Trust 5 to be implemented in parallel. So from this trust, we need to come up with the how part, because the trust and the strategic direction is very high level. So the how part is actually adopting EA to see whether the high level, the strategic directions, or the how part on how we implement at the strategic level and also at the capability level, by adopting EA. So when we are looking into the technology perspective of the digital government, yes, we must use technology, but to do what? So these are some of the values that we need to understand when we adopting new technology or even not new, the current technology. Yeah? So the fast changing of technology is actually meant to use to solve problems. For example, now people do without phone, yeah. So the movement from desktop or towards mobile service or the web mobile service is very much, we can see the difference. Yeah, it's actually give you an opportunity to see whether the services that we have now can be used or available through mobile. So that is how we actually using the technology to solve the problem in terms of geolocation, in terms of the different services, in terms of different age group. Right. So the second issue is on the opportunity to create or modify existing business based on technology. For example, if as maybe before this we have to go to counters, we have to have a physical ID. So for the next 5 years, we might not have to have a physical license. Maybe the license is in terms of digital form, so that we can reduce in terms of the cost for production of digital means, yeah, the product, yeah, the manual products. So with this plan or with this in mind, we will be thinking of how to design the data, the services, the customer experience towards that kind of changing, yeah, environment. The third one, when we look into the technology perspective, is on how to deliver value. Meaning to say, if you have these services and you are actually you doing your transaction online through your laptop, then suddenly you are disconnected or you have to do something else, and then you open the same application in your mobile, you will get the same status or the stage that you are truncated. So at that time, what we need to do when we are the developer of the services is that to make sure that the way that we operate or we deliver the services to the customer is multi-experience, meaning to say with whatever devices, they get the same experience that they do. For example, like Google, if you search for certain keyword in your laptop and you open it in your mobile, you will get the same history of what you have searched before. And of course, we have to look into the technology trend. So this has been researched by the team on the digitalization strategic plan to look into what are the area that we need to enhance for the next 5 years. So based on the study, 40%, if you look at the 2021, 40% of data and project analysis will be about customer experience. So we have to have enough talent to understand how to design the services through customer experience. And also 45% of the data now is done in manual form, will be reduced using machine learning technology. So do we have enough talent to understand, not to build, but to understand how machine learning can help in terms of enhancing our services. For the next 2020, they are focusing about mobile. All the services should be connected through mobile. So what happened to the area that cannot receive very good data? We have to look into the fiberization progress in terms of how they want to have physical connection, or maybe not connected all the areas using the technology that we have now, and so on. So if we look into some of the areas that we mentioned here, we actually have done some of the services have met the needs of mobile applications, and also using the intelligence devices in their services. If according to Gartner, these are the trend for 2021. I think this is in UK or in US, not in Malaysia. But for Malaysia, for our context, it is a future technology that we have to be ready. So what we need to do at the early stage is more on the awareness, on the design, and understanding the needs of embedding all these new technologies in our processes and services. Some of the technology that we are using now, for example, like IoT, which is being used widely in terms of monitoring projects, or in terms of penguatkuasaan, yeah. So we have to look into how we actually embed all these needs in our projects. So when we do some architecture, when we do the to-be architecture, we have to consider all this technology in the next 5 or 10 years for Malaysia. Yeah? So what are the challenges that we actually have right now in terms of the digital transformation or digitalizations? As I mentioned just now, there are 6 focus areas. One is on the leadership. We have to groom our digital leaders so that they have the mind of digital leaders, not only the roles of digital leaders. Yeah. And of course, in terms of policy and regulation, we have to make sure that our policy and regulation is more transparent and not very controlling. In terms of funding, the public-private partnerships will be enhanced. In terms of the people, we need to make sure that understanding of each age group to adopt the digital natives, yeah, to make sure that they are ready in terms of the changing of digital services. Of course, I mentioned about multi-experiences now on digital services is still new terms that and still challenges for us to make sure that our services can be can have the same experience in a different devices. Yeah? Equilibrium and the technology is actually looking into how digital we can build the services. Is looking into the online or end-to-end, or still you need a counter, or some of the services you cannot do it in digital means. You still have to go on the field and doing all the, for example, like pemeriksaan, all the kilang-kilang and jentera, things like that, and licensing for pilot, you still have to go on the ground. Yeah. But the data that you collected on the ground is actually digital data. So we have to look into the balance of these two. In terms of data governance, we are looking into data provenance. Data provenance is actually the source of data that we collected. For example, like now, when we are talking about education data, it's actually the secondary data that we get from the same source. So we have to look into how to handle the ownership, the consent, the custodians of handling data, also the classification of data. So these are the challenges that we have to, we foresee that we have to have some kind of program or change management program, so that the implementation will be much more smoother. This is okay. This is what Gartner says about everything customer or multi experience just now. If we look at the bottom, These are all the technologies that the users are actually using right now, to get the services. Not only mobile, not only wearable, but they also gestures and touch to every services when you are using digital device. So not only these are part of channels that we have to look into. This is how we find the right balance based on the value propositions. Is it practical for us to make it digital? Will be accept? Does it if we change it to digital, will the society accept it? Or maybe because of the trust issue, or maybe because of the cybersecurity issues, the adoption will be less. Then we have to know when we design the services, when we architecting the needs of the solution, then we have to look into all this to make sure that we find the right balance. MIT says that culture is the greatest behavior to data success. I think this is true. If we are looking into the this year, we are looking into the legislation and also the data governance. What we find out for the public sector, data sharing, what we find out is that people's reluctance to share is not because of the legislation saying so, but because of their trust in terms of sharing the data. So when we change, when we want to change the culture, we have to also highlight in terms of the importance of cybersecurity in terms of trust. Yeah. So how do we use the EA to leverage the business value? So we have to ask, before we do the designing of a solution, we have to ask, why do we need to change? Why the government needs to change? Yeah. So when we look into when we are talking to the developers of application, I get this response. To me, as long as the application meets the needs of the user, how we design it is not important. But the architect says that you must design it so that the user will be happy or delighted, because you don't have to ask. The user don't have to ask, why don't I get this? Because you have think about it beforehand. So there should be a different, I think both are right, because they are looking into the perspective from their roles. So in terms of services, when we are designing digital services, we have to really look into playing a different role rather than what is important to us as the developer or as an architect. So that is what we need to understand when we want to change the at the service level. Of course, the data people will not. I mean, the client will not really fussy about the data, because it's actually, as long as they get the information what they want and the transaction is a success, then they are happy. But we have to look into, of course, in terms of data protection, in terms of consent, because before this, if we want to have the service from the government asks for example, 5 levels of your data, you just give it to them without any question asked. You don't know what they're going to do with it. But now we have to actually look into how we get the consent from the legally from the client. Yeah. Infra, we have to make sure that we are better prepared for very robust and fast real-time data that we need in terms to give the services, intelligence services to their client. And of course, the last one is in terms of public-private partnership, as I mentioned. Not necessarily all the government services owned by government. If we want to make sure that the industry is developing and grooming, we have to make sure that some of the services can be delivered through maybe some sort of service management, or maybe in terms of win-win situation. We give you the client, you give us the services. You don't have to find you don't have to find any market because the market is in front of you. So things like that have to be looked into in terms of digitalization as a whole. When we're leveraging on EA, we have to look into how we design the service, the digital service. Maybe these are the 5 perspectives that we have in mind when we are designing digital service. From the planning, from the overall solutions, and how does it impact in terms of the policy and the legislation and procedures. Do we have the budget? And what are the impact of the services? Which is on the left hand is the process that we are actually using EA to align back from the vision, mission, and the goals towards the impact of the project. So if we are looking from the top, we are actually realizing strategy through vision and mission. As we know, we have plan strategic pendigitalan sector on right now. And what are the objectives and goals that we need to achieve? We are aligning with our strategy for business and also technology. As of now, we are dealing with 2 different plans. We have a long-term plan and we have a short-term plan. And we still segregate the business strategy and IT strategy. In digitalization strategy plan, we actually should have embed these 2 together. So when we understand what is the current situation as is, and then we understand what are the direction that we need to achieve and what are the opportunity that we have, then we get a gap. In EA we call it as is and to be, right? So the gap is actually to achieve the to be. So during the understanding of that, we need to know what are the changes that we need to do with the processes. Maybe we do some BPR, business process engineering, and what are the risks that we are taking into account when we change the services, the medium of the services, the process of the services itself. How do we innovate it, right? So from there, then we understand that maybe the program and activities will be divided into a 5-year plan roadmap or 2-year plan roadmap. It depends on how big the gaps are. Then we go through the implementation, of course. Every initiatives will be realized through project and make sure that the outcome is actually, project outcome is actually meets the needs of the vision and mission that we have translated into strategy. Yeah? So this is actually how we leverage EA in the planning and also the implementation of project. So if we are looking into the digital strategic plan, Trust 2 and Trust 1 is actually about services and data. So when we are talking about services, we have to look into the ecosystem of public sector services. We have B2B, we have G2B, we have G2C, and also we have, as I mentioned just now, services that government services that being given by the industry or the company. Yeah? So we have central agency to support the services to the frontliners or direct to the departments. Currently, we have 5 groups of sectors. Prior to this, prior to March 2020, we have 4 sectors. Yeah, infrastructure is one new sector. It's not new actually. It's just they make it one different sectors by itself. Yeah, so that they can actually focus on each of the sector to develop the services and the industry. Okay, of course we need to understand the target group just now. So these are among category of customers, government customers that we need to focus on. For example, G2G, we are looking into not only government internally, but also government outside the country. Of course, when we are talking about citizen, we are also talking about non-citizen. How do we address this? Yeah, of government employees is another target group. The academic society, yeah, academia, and also at the bottom layer is more towards the contribution to the economic digital economy. Yeah? We have to look into how we actually address the needs of industry, company, investors, and also visitors that come to Malaysians. These are the live events, or we call it peristiwa kehidupan, that we have in our portal, the government portal, malaysia.gov.my, which will be increasing. This what we have planned for in terms of the life cycles within the community, business community, and also the citizen. So from this live event, we map it into each perspective of target group. For example, like rakyat, we have 14 live event, or we call it peristiwa kehidupan, that rakyat need to have a touch point with the government. For example, like kelahiran and kematian number 1 and number 14, which is interrelates, whereby you need your family to address the services for you, right? So in that area, actually rakyat also includes family-based services. We are before this, when we are talking about citizen, we are talking about individual. But now we are looking into how the individual and also family-based services need to be enhanced. The rest of the live event based on the perspective of rakyat is actually looking into how you live your life, whereby you will get some portion of kebajikan, maybe of course you need pendidikan, you have to work, which is your career, pekerjaan. And if you are not working with somebody, you must be working on your own, or you have your own company, right? So that will include perniagaan as well. Your health, your assets, you have houses, you have cars, and you need to go anywhere, you must have a document perjalanan. And all of this need how you manage your money, and how do you deal with when you have urgency or emergencies, and what is your as a citizen or as an individual, what is your right, and you have to of course contribute to the community and also environment. So these are the 14 areas that we are looking into when we are actually designing the digital services. In the EA, what we do is actually we come up with a reference architecture of services that meet all these 14 categories. This is from the perspective of an organization. As a government organization, first of all, you must be structured as an organization or established. within the Akta Tubuh, or maybe because of the ministerial function that MFO that we have now, which agency is doing what policy. So then for you to operate, you must have resources. For one of it is people, you must have money, you must have assets that you need to manage. And to implement your activities and program, you must have plan, project plan, then you develop your project through development of project, short-term, long-term, how you manage the project, and also monitor projects and make sure that the outcome of the project meet the needs of the objective of the projects, and the how you promote the services or the implementation of your policy to the target group. And of course, all this implementation and program and project will be audited to make sure that the accountability and transparency is there. So all these G2G services is actually almost the same among all the ministries. So what are we going to do about it is actually looking into how we can ensure that all these services is have their own platform to interact between each others. For example, like Sumber Manusia, we already have Hermes, but we know that several agencies which have their own professions, they have their own way of handling the people's or Sumber Manusia as well. So how do we integrate all this data so that by end of the day, we get all the holistic view of how we manage our resources. This is from the perspective of perniagaan. Just now, if we go from the rakyat, we have one live event about perniagaan. So this is focusing on the business community. So from the beginning, when you want to plan your business, until you have to manage your the termination of your business. So all this, all the stages you need to you have to interact with the government. So the same with just now what we are doing with the rakyat. We have every phases of business, managing business to be, for example, like a product and for investors. We already have a platform for import-exports, for example, of products. So how do we facilitate this business to get their certifications, to get their permit, get their license, to make sure that their tax is properly collected. So all those platforms need to be looked into as one, not as agency-based functions. This is from the perspective of penjawat awam. We, as a government officer, from the day that we become prior to that, when we are actually dealing with SPA or SPP, to be the government officer until the day that we retire. So all these processes, most of the processes are with SPA, JPA, and also MOF. So I believe this one is much better design rather than the other three target group. These are the strategy that the government-wide architecture is looking into. We're looking into the numbers of 1, 2, and 3. Is actually associated with the first one is we have to define what are the services. As of now, here I put 4 sectors because prior to this, prior to March, we are actually looking into 4 sectors, but now it becomes 5 sectors. But the cluster of services is still the same. We have 18 cluster services, and we have identified in our reference model 210 services. From 210 services in the business reference models, we map it into the end-to-end services or online services, also counter services that we are collecting through our monitoring activities. As of now, we have about 10,469 services, which is online, but there are services which is still not online. So from here, then we identify the processes that involve in dealing with end-to-end services. For example, if you have one services that you have to mohon, and then you have to sema, and then you have to bayar, and then it will delivered to you. So those processes is actually the process that involve in giving the end-to-end services. All the services that we handle must be associated with the same data category or cluster. In this case, we need to understand the governance of the data in terms of how the data is structured, what are the metadata we are using, and who are the owner of all this data. How do we make sure that the data is secure in terms of information sharing as well. Yeah. So all this architecture, call it reference, yeah? All these reference will be used during the designing of the digital processes. These are 20 common services that we identify to make sure that possible opportunity for us to come up with one simple form to make sure the customer experience is much better. For example, we as a citizen need to register in a lots of government transaction or activities. So why don't we have this? Single registrations whereby our data can be used? For example, like address, right? If we already register the address that we are now, at any time we can change the address if we are moving to example. Then all the agencies that need the current address of where we are now or where we live will get the data immediately, the changes of the data immediately. So that's how we should look into how the common services will reduce the numbers of customer experience to enlighten the customer experience to be much more easy to use. These are actually the common architecture for information sharing. We have in EA, we are looking into the overall information architecture for the public sector wide. We have DDSA, Government Data, as a metadata management in terms of how you want to develop and format your data. And also we have Malaysian Government Portal, BERSAMA, to look into the information structure of the information and transaction services that we do in BERSAMA. So for all these three elements will be the main area that we have to manage to make sure that the information sharing mechanism is secure. So from the personalization perspective, if I'm a rakyat, then these are the data or the digital data that really prime to my services to me. As a connected government, we have to look into the perspective of client. How do we deal from the perspective of rakyat just now, yeah? So with this priority of common data, prime data, then this data can be used by industry to validate, to make sure that the identity is correct and everything. So the data will be interconnected into different types of application. There is a common application that we can use because of the nature of the application is the same, or the process is the same, or the services is the same. And also generate application whereby every agency can use the same data. Or maybe group application based on sector, based on cluster, based on subclusters, and also specific application that only that agency have the services. Only one agency have the services. So we map those application to the architecture of the technology in terms of how we build the data warehouse for each of the data utama, and also which one is the services that we can actually have it in centralized means. Yeah. These are the data that we collect this year to understand in terms of the data governance, the ownership of the data, and also the custodian of the data and the security of the data. Some of the data within the same subcluster is the same, and some of the data is actually distinct with this subcluster. If you are looking into the application and technology, these are actually how in the framework of development system, we are using the enterprise architecture as the governing part on how to make sure that the designing and the engineering of the application is being done. This is the strategy to the reference that we are using as of now, the MyGovEA reference model, to categorize and understand how we manage the application and also the technology. I won't go into details on this. These are the functions of application standard that we have come up with, and these are the guidance for every agencies and ministries to make sure that when they develop an application, they should look into the functionalities of those applications. Maybe different applications serve different functionalities, but for an organization that serve or facilitate the services to their client, they should have all this functionality in place. We come up also with the application architecture that actually maps the different group of application or type of application towards the government portal. Yeah? So we know how to actually look into the different solution for each different types of application, different group of application. These are an examples in Korea, whereby from those different application group, they have framework to ensure that there are common modules that they understand can be reused. So the common modules, when they use the common modules, it actually can advance in terms of fast to market of their applications or solutions. Of course, the framework will be associated with what software that they are using, but actually the common applications that using the same software can have standardization in terms of how they develop the application, whether you are using the same APIs or you are actually having it in as a client server or web services or cloud-based applications. So that every agencies and ministries will be focusing on their business logic rather than focusing on developing a new framework, common components that they can reuse. So if we have this in mind, then the way that we develop or purchase or procure application development will be different. We can also have these are the experience of Korea in terms of how they implement the e-government framework and reduce the time frame of development 20%, 70 to 80%. Yeah? And then we understand for digital government landscape initiative with the target group in mind, then what are the solution and platform that we have. So if we look into the multiple, meaning to say there are multiple platforms that being developed from a different ministries or department. So we have to look into whether we need to have one platform or we can work within the multiple platform. So almost this is actually looking into from the Korean perspective. So with all those in mind, what we need to do is actually looking back for the architecture that we have now and designing so that the future architecture will be more structured and seamless. For example, we need to understand how digital ID is actually being used as an SSO or single sign-on in the single gateway or maybe multiple gateway. We have to decide on that. Of course, we have multiple registry that we have to manage for the government and also for the industry. When we are looking into a different design of architecture, we also have to look into changing the current design and architecture for the technology. For example, like digital service channels, end-to-end services, how do we design it? We want to do as one or maybe multiple services can also achieve the target. Must be citizen-centric or customer-centric. Must relies on cashless and also make sure that the sustainability and resilience of the services. These are examples of holistic solution design that use GIS led by MACD or now is PDN, yeah, and Japan to have one platform. They're actually looking this solution in this COVID-19 implementation of data tracking, yeah, in terms of jejak wabak lah, by MKN. I think they still in the implementation phase. So if we have this in mind, we have to understand the importance of data sharing and also a different way of we design services as one service from the government. With that, I thank you.
Good afternoon again. My name is Aaron. So I will be sharing the so-called the approach or the method that so-called need to be done to achieve what I think just now Dr. Isyana has described. So what I would position my presentation like -1 from what she has elaborated in terms of what are government activities in terms of, on the track to achieve digital government of Malaysia. Okay, so actually the topic is about customer. Customer, of course, in this context is the citizen. And of course, this is the reality of our life today. We don't expect anything delay. We don't want to get so-called news that we know this morning, but we want to get real time. So anything that we do, our expectation is getting higher because of course pushed by the availability of the technology, the lifestyle, and etc. So we also expect government to do the same. So this is where I think if you have seen that Dr. Isyana has elaborated in terms of what the government is trying to do behind the scene, because very rare to know all the insight about what has happened. What we know is reading in the newspaper. And people asking whether our government doing something or not, but you can see just now from the presentation, they have so many work because we are talking about the country. We are not talking about a company with 100 people or with 1,000 people. This is talking about the company with 30 million people. That is huge. And the effort is not like, imagine that if you are taking a boat and you are taking a big ship. The boat, you can just turn it. The seat, when you turn, you need to really plan it at the long trajectory. And of course, the on demand is also something that are expected. We want to do it almost like whenever I want it. We cannot say you come back tomorrow. So this is also something that a government around the world are changing because of the citizen expectation is also changing. And of course, everything online. We don't expect you go to the counter and to visit. Yeah, so I think this is also a big challenge, not only within government, but many enterprises today. And we want to do it ourselves. So we are empowered, we can fill in the form at home and etc. And social also very very important because we want to share the experience with other people. If we think we have a good suggestion, we can voice out. So these are something so-called we need to have. And of course, for the citizen, if you want to track the citizen satisfaction or citizen happiness index, these are the things that will be surveyed. And let me bring down further to the so-called to the concept. What are the things that need to be in place for all that to be realized for a successful so-called digital government? First, I think citizen-led, because now, as you can see, that citizen can express if they are not happy, etc. So citizen need to drive. And the complexity, I think if we draw the map about what is happening is much more complex than this map. Maybe the line just can't be seen. Yeah, but there are 5 so-called key design principles. The first one is citizen-led. So citizen basically make the decision. They drive where the government should provide the services. So they demand something. Yeah, because we are all taxpayer and we expect the government to give us a so-called the conveniences. So in this context, is actually is just now was mentioned by Dr. Is about the live events. Yeah, which is the citizen journey map. So this one we need some sort of architecture. We cannot just say, oh, we want to launch this service, but the service need to be integrated and interconnected, seamless. So we need a business architecture to be put in place. The second one, of course, insight driven. So basically, you need to know about everything. So we don't want to, so-called be prompted again the thing that we have provided. So this is where we need to apply like the concept of artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analytics, which is the domain of information architecture, which also I think is the currently in progress as described in Dr. E's presentation. And of course, the third one on the responsiveness. We want everything to be very, very responsive. We don't want to have a lagging, right? Because everything need in today era of the digital, we just want to have instant answer. So this is where the business architecture and software architecture, just now I think also been shared, how the platform itself need to be so-called aligned and integrated. The last part is on the connected. So connected basically is the seamless processes. So across agency, across ministry, perhaps even a government to the private, government to the industry, all are seamlessly connected. This is where the business architecture and infra architecture need to be in place. And so these are some of the key design principles. And of course, this is just, I believe you have seen this illustration. So yeah, it has been circulated in the many social media and etc. But let's just look into the situation, the context. This is what happened where if we as a parent, we buy a new toy and we want our baby to be happy. Okay, because we love them so much. So we just hang the musical, toys for our baby to enjoy. But what happened when you are a baby? It's quite pathetic, isn't it? So you see all that, and there isn't anything cute at all, right? So this is something that we all need to be aware. We all need to be so-called put this in mind when we provide new services, because we really need to put ourselves into the recipient rather than to the provider. Because imagine that perhaps this may cost a lot of money, imported for or limited edition, but to the baby is I don't enjoy this. Yeah, so this is something that we need to be aware of. And of course, before I continue further, let me just show you the video on the so-called customization, but not on really on the particular citizen, but more on the particular customer. How this concept on the restaurant doing a tailor customization to know that which time of the day, which are the so-called the profile of their customer visiting the so-called this restaurant. So let's enjoy this video for about 3-4 minutes.
Every restaurant wants its customers to be happy. But how can you tell whether this is actually the case? And how can effective improvements and innovations be made to your services? Finding the answers to these questions requires knowing more about your customers. What sort of people are they? What do they expect from the restaurant? Customer journey mapping, seeing things through customers' eyes, allows us to take a good look at a restaurant's services from the outside. Customers are asked to share their experiences in detail as part of our in-depth qualitative research. Cultural probing, one-on-one interviews, observations are all part of the customer journey mapping methodology, providing great insights and data to develop different personas. This student is looking for a comfortable place to eat and work with fellow students. He'd like to place group orders in advance, but finds the mobile website too complicated. This woman is having a tough day at work. She wants the convenience of ordering online and still having a relaxing time eating healthy food. This senior citizen is feeling lonely at home. She wants to go out for a snack and maybe a chat, but finds it confusing to order food at the counter. Finally, this working man is in a busy meeting. He would like to have his lunch delivered during his break and is anxious that it arrives on time. These customer journeys serve as a source of inspirational ideas. Imagine that you get to understand your customers better. You know which points in your service are below customer expectations, and you can develop new or improved ideas together with your customers. Let's say our student places his online group order without any problems. At the restaurant, his group sits at a large table with power socket, games and free internet. Our working woman can easily make healthy choices thanks to the clear information about nutritional values and ingredients. The atmosphere in the restaurant is relaxing and, after lunch, she can even stay for a free chair massage. Our senior citizen is shown to her seat by the friendly staff, where her order is taken. She soon finds someone to chat with. And our working man is focused on his meeting, sure that his business lunch will be delivered on time. Customer journey mapping enables you to effectively improve your services and work on a healthy future for your company, a future with happy customers.
We can imagine that just now about the video is exactly what happened when we map a particular journey. So this is also another map, even though in the boxes, but you can imagine that this so-called shop has already put the emotion of their client. So they put it in from the, if you see on the left hand side, from horrible, bad, neutral, satisfied, and gratified. So every journey step that a customer going through their store, they know that some of the experience are not too good, right? If you can see on the number 18, I want you to focus on the right bottom, number 18, between horrible and bad when they do their own installation or when they are picking up a stock. But when you see about the number 9, right, when you want to try the product, you can sit on it, you can play on it as though like it is yours in their store. Okay, the display setting is very beautiful, number 8, and then number 6, product quality is number high, and the price also is average, and in fact good value, number 7. And of course, some of the things that are not too good is like a checkout when you want to make payment, but they sell a so-called ice cream and hot dogs at the cheaper rate. So you can have a guess what store is this. And of course, these stores are available. I think in there are 2 or 3 stores in Singapore. There are, I think, got 4 stores in Malaysia itself. They have in JB, in Penang, 2 in KL. So this actually about IKEA store. So IKEA store has designed their so-called journey, the customer journey, to go through this type of so-called emotion, right? Imagine if you are trapped in the middle of the store and you want to get out fast, you just don't know which exit to go through, because the exit could be emergency exit. It's not really going back to the so-called exit that you enter. Okay, so all these are designed in such a way to have a customer experience. So it's the same thing with our so-called design for so-called live event for the citizen. There are things that we cannot give so-called a gratifying. There are certain things that we leave it as the bad or neutral because we need to balance. This is talking about architecture. Yeah, not everything at the super gratifying. If you want to be super gratifying, then you have to pay premium for your product and services. So there are actually 5 building blocks of the citizen journey mapping. The first one is persona. Persona is where I think just now you have seen in the video. I think even the Dr. Is already mentioned that some targeting the disabled community, some targeting a visitor, some targeting citizens, some targeting a housewife, some targeting a business community, and etc. So we really need to tailor the persona. And secondly, on the timeline, timeline means basically is the particular moment that particular group need these services, right? For instance, we need to renew the passport every 5 years or 10 years, and we need to apply a certain type of the permit. So we know the timeline when it's coming. Then we can keep track to make sure that we send the notification, we keep them in the loop, and etc. Then emotion is where we need to know that at what point of the emotion that customer or citizen will come and visit us. Okay, not all the services when they're happy. Imagine that if you are doing a so-called counseling, so could be a people that are anger or anxious come to you. If they're happy, they will not visit your store or your services. So we need to know the emotion as well. And of course, the channel. How do you want to provide these particular services in what channel? And the touch point, whether you have a particular kiosk or a particular counter or etc. So these are things that need to be put into the design. And this is an example on the particular customer that want to browse for the book online. So you basically you go to certain website and you want to browse particular book. So of course they got the step that you will need to do, right? You have to search the keyword, you enter, you browse. Then after that you read the review, you look at table of contents, and at the end you buy. After that you go for delivery. So we need to know that at any point in time on every step, where are they? Perhaps you think like you're providing a good service, but you need to get the independent review and feedback from the client. What happened for every of the journey interface when they go through online browsing the book to buy from your store. And the next one is, of course, another example on the service design. Like you got a various customer journey mapping, but I want you to focus on the left bottom, right? Various touch point and various internal department collaboration. So like you think like just now we want to provide a similar services for the client, but actually behind the scene, you need to design a process flow or value stream that touching a various department. If one of the department not cooperative or didn't have a smooth transition, your customer experience will definitely break. So these are something that enterprise architecture playing a critical role for us to understand this and to analyze the opportunity. And of course, this is another just now is the same on the previous slide, but I put it in the boxes. But I want to highlight on the bottom layers. So the bottom layers actually is very, very key. Without analyzing the architecture in detail, we might miss the opportunity to improve our so-called services. We are talking about e-government services integrated across ministry, across agency. And this is actually is very, very large. So we really need to understand the gap in terms of the business, data, application, and infrastructure technology itself. So basically the method of identifying and recognizing the opportunity at hand, how we can improve the yellow part and the red part so that citizen going through the live event, they can have a smooth, seamless experience. And of course, the concept to do that, I think this is just one slide that are technical about TOGAF, about the so-called framework to execute the enterprise architecture. So in terms of the strategy and motivation layer is that we need to know just now, I think mentioned by Dr. Is got so many trusts. So we need to put that into the particular design to understand the context. Then after that, we start doing the business architecture in terms of just now doing a mapping on the live event and identify the gap opportunity. Likewise, for the application and technology, what are the opportunity at hand? Because when you have some sort of gaps, there's basically an opportunity for improvement, basically a project that keep us going and make us very, very busy. And with that, let me just wrap up in the context of what sort of the digital EA platform provide. So basically, it target a quite number of key stakeholders. So the first one is more on the like head of strategy in terms like you develop strategic planning, ICT strategic planning, ISP or PSP, and how that can be realized with the various initiative. Then for the business architect, basically talking about understanding about the business and what are the collaboration need to be in place, processes, function. And for the chief digital officer, basically is talking more on the like what are so-called area of opportunity that we need to digitalize further. And for the chief customer officer, looking more on the like just now doing a mapping and understanding the customer journey, the gap or the what are the area that we need to improve. And for the architect and the portfolio manager and of course the solution architect, basically to understand on the what are the model in there, what are the impact, what are the thing that when we make some changes, what are so-called the thing that interdependent or intra-dependent. And of course, for the investment or the budgeting itself, we need to put the priority and which are the so-called the quick win. Quick win mean is the high value and the less risk. And of course, for the risk officer to analyze if in case got any vulnerability, which are the so-called application infra or the business that we need to quarantine. And for the CIO itself, for the public sector to understand the whole process of the transformation and be able to track. So with that, I think I want to hand over to Cak Hasan Ghani. So he'll be sharing more on the practical case study on the various workshop that I think has been taken place in the last 2 to 4 years within the Malaysian government. Over to you, Cak Hasan Ghani.
Okay, so I'll do just a quick sharing on the case study of the digital enterprise architecture in the public sector, very much focus on the customer journey. Okay. Okay, when we talk about the customer journey, we also do the reference to the business reference model from MyGov EA. Okay, so basically we'll be looking into the business domain areas, okay, which has the business service categories and also the subcategories. So when you talk about the business area domain, there are 5 domain areas that we look into the customer journey from the social economic sector, social sector itself, the security sector, the government supporting, and also the government resource management. Okay. So for each of these sectors, then we have the services, okay, that is being provided. Basically, when you talk about the social sector, it's very much on the G2B, okay, and social sector is talking about the G2C to the citizens or the customers. Security sector will have both G2B and G2C, whereas the supporting will have all, including the employees, which is the penjawat awam. And for the resource management, it's G2D and also the G2E. Okay, so these are some of the explanation on the domain. So basically, the social sector is talking about, okay, directly provided by the government, the services provided directly by the government or on behalf of the citizens to local or foreign companies. Or social sector also refers to the services provided directly by the government on behalf of the citizens. Security is very much to ensure the country is running in a safe and also secure manner. The government support services is very much on the public sector. Okay, looking into the policies, the ACTAs, the strategic planning, and also the support operations. And finally, the government resource management is talking about all the support activities to enable the government running efficiently. Okay. So I'll just share some quick slides on the sectors. Okay. So each of the social sectors, socio-economic will have the business, industry, and support, economic management, the trade, facilitation, and they have their subcategories, okay, by itself. So each of the services actually will fall in one of these categories, okay. So similarly for the social, we have the employment. This is very much touching on our citizens. Employment, the education, the healthcare, okay, and so on. Security is very much on the defense, the justice, okay, and also the security. Support services very much on the public sector itself. We're also talking about the knowledge and information exchange, the governance part of it, okay, the statistical services. And finally, for the resource management, these are very typically the administration, the finance, the backend, I'm talking about human resource, ICT, and so on. Okay, so looking into the services that we provide, we always look to what Gartner says. Okay, Gartner is saying that services in the future are the one that actually looks into outside out. Currently, we actually focusing on inside out. That means whatever services that we have, we provide to our customers. Then we look into the perspective of outside in, okay, from the customer perspective. And moving forward is the ecosystem whereby the services that is given by the government is done by many parties, okay, together, including the other agencies, plus also the private sectors. Okay. So we have seen this before from Dr. Is. We are looking into the life event. Okay, the customer journey will look into the life event from birth up to death. Okay, so there are many services that's been provided. Okay, during our journey in our life. Okay, so mainly the focus area in this case study will look into the people that are OKU students and also the job seekers. Okay, so these are the services that they might be looking into. And when a student goes to school, they need some financial aid. And then when they grow up, they need to have their driving license. They go for get work. Okay, there's employment. And after that, of course, they have their pension services that needs to be considered. Then some of them will be going into business, okay, and so on. So taking all these things into consideration, okay, we look into different tracks of the clusters. Okay, different tracks of the clusters, looking into the agriculture and also the trade, the transportation, infrastructure, education, talking about the healthcare, security, and also a track looking into the implementation on the performance of the projects, okay, taxation and excise, and also the human resource. Okay. So the approach that we took, okay, to do this live event or customer journey is looking into a customer journey map workshop approach, okay, whereby we have gathered all the various tracks agencies, okay, into a series of workshop series, so that we actually look into how we can actually target for each of the government services is given to different service clusters. Okay, if you look at this diagram, this is one of the sessions that we held. Many of them actually attend, and was also, you know, officiated and facilitated together with Dr. Is. Okay, she's there. So one good thing that we have in this session is to include the business people. Very important actually to have the business people together with the IT people. And one of the things that we found is that the business people, once they understand the customer journey mapping techniques and approach, they actually take over and run the entire session by themselves. Okay. Okay, so for this example, we look into some of the persona for the rakyat. Okay, rakyat means in the citizens, and focusing on OKUs. Okay, pencari kerja and pelajar. The reason why we included things like OKU because some of the services that's been given, or even the IT system that has been designed, caters for normal people. So we need to also look into how actually we cater for everybody. Okay, access to everybody, inclusive of the OKUs and every citizen and non-citizen, okay, that's living in our country. So from all the 9 tracks, we actually came out with like 17 initial personas, okay, starting from pencari kerja, okay, job seekers or business seekers, okay, running a food truck business. Okay, we also talked about how to encourage people to become a modern petani, okay, and then we have people who wants to pick up and doing Grab. So of course the transportation industry plays a very important role. pembeli kereta, okay, purchaser of the car, then a student who after finishing SPM, okay, and so on. Okay, we have the pekerja, job seekers, we have even the kanak-kanak autism. How actually we actually treat kanak-kanak autism. We have also a teenager, belia manis, okay, who had a problem in studying the normal academic curriculum, but pursuing in other areas, okay, to look into what are the opportunities that the government actually prepares for them. In the healthcare, we also look into kanak-kanak obesity. It becomes one of the key problems, okay, in the country where growing adults becoming more and more obese, and it starts from the child itself. Okay, so education and healthcare plays an important role in this area. Okay, then doing business online, okay, seeking or getting the scholarships, okay, up to buying the house, and also somebody who's having a critical illnesses in the government servant, okay, how is they are being treated and so on. Okay, so the one of the techniques that is being used is the design thinking techniques, okay, whereby we gather the people in a group, okay, using simple tools, like the sticky notes, okay, using the margin paper, and we use the entire wall in all the seminar rooms, okay, or the workshop rooms, to actually plot the customer journey and use that as the discussion point. Okay, so we use sticky notes, to place the services, the touch points, and it's easier for us to actually move things around. Okay, so that you can adjust and see where the services have been, been done or taken place, what are the channels been used. Okay, and also highlighting all the different types of persona. Okay, in the customer journey. Okay, this is where I mentioned that business slowly, once they know about this technique, they actually can actually design what's happening currently and look into the pain points and also identify which are the areas for them to improve. Okay, so very active participation, okay, from everybody. And yeah, and this one of this group actually, if you look at this room, all the other tables are empty because they came in early, okay, just after lunch to start their discussion, okay, because they want to solve some of the real problem that they had in their agency. Okay. So a very active participation and churning out all the actual issues, trying to position from the end customer's point of view. And we ourselves are also customers, okay, or citizens that actually render or get services from the government, and we're able to relate some of the challenges. Okay, so here's one of the example how we craft the customer journey map. Okay, by looking into a persona. Okay, for this case, this is Ahmad Hassan. So we do a fictitious persona, taking a name, an age, and then how this person wants to be a petani modern. And then we plot all the customer journey. Okay, we put there must be a kajian to be done, then there's a bantuan, financial aid to be given, and in this agency, okay, they provide all these services or all these journey steps that they provide to a particular petani, okay, a farmer. Okay, so in this case, after getting the aid, they also provide how to increase their skills in the modern technology farming. Okay, and then also run the operations of the farming, and then do the marketing, the selling part of it, and how actually they grow the business. Okay, and we highlight all these touch points and then putting all the interactions, and there's our coding. Okay, the numbers, the codings are all the emotions, whether they are happy in getting the services or they have some challenges, okay, in the getting the services. Okay. And also we identify all the services that's provided by the agencies. Okay, if you look at here, there's Mara, there's a Pusat Latihan that's taking place, there's a agriculture agencies that's involved, okay, and many other players. Okay, they have also the Kementerian Sumber Manusia. So one good thing about this customer journey is it looks at the end-to-end holistic ecosystem and the value chain from end-to-end processes. Okay, then highlighting all the agencies and also the external agencies that is involved in providing the services. Okay, so this is another example. This is Najib, age 29. This is assistant engineer. Okay, he's been married with, and he wants to buy a house. Okay, so buying a house in Malaysia is also challenging, especially those who wants to get the bantuan kerajaan or rumah bantuan kerajaan. Okay, so there's many touch points where they have the hasrat, the intention to buy, then they do research where to buy it, and then the purchase takes place, and then they sit in the, they occupy the house, and maybe they will do a process of selling the house. So it's looking into the entire journey and what are all the agencies that's involved. And these touch points will talk about the different types of channels that's been involved and what is the emotion. Okay. So emotions are very important to capture so that we can look into the services that's been given and how we can improve those services. So we identify the customer, the persona, and then the next step is to do all the customer journeys. Okay. So in this case, you have the permohonan application, you have the assessment, then you have the implementation, the monitoring, and also the maintenance. And then you have all the touch points, different types of channels, and the emotions, okay, that actually takes place in each of the touch point. So typically a customer journey will cover these areas, but when we do our services from ATD and together with Mabu, we actually added this product and services, okay, as one of the added point, so that we can look into what are the deliverables, the output, the application being used, and also who are actually giving the services. Okay, so from here we try to link the customer journey, okay, together with the enterprise architecture. Okay, so these are four key areas that we actually look into components to actually use the customer journey together with enterprise architecture, so that the enterprise the customer journey that actually we plot is actually digitized into a particular architecture. Okay. So this is the customer journey we plot into the enterprise architecture notations using Archimate, and we have the business processes on the top, and then all the channels, okay, and also the business services that's been provided, and we have all the interaction points, the touch point, and emotion being captured. Okay, next we look into their capability. So what capability is needed to provide all these services? Okay, the capability and also all the resources. Okay, resources comes in through, okay, whether it's the role, the agency is playing the role, the data, the application, and the technology being used. And then we identify all the gaps and we consolidate all the gaps and opportunity into a project. And then we plot all the project based on the priority. Okay? Whether it's looking into the complexity of the project and also the business value that's been created. So it gives you a sense of what are the initiatives or the programs that needs to be done or the projects, okay, to handle and resolve this service design over here. And finally, we look at the target architecture of the entire landscape, okay, whereby we look at the processes that's been involved over here, okay, looking into who actually provides and receives the services, what are the business process in detail that's been taking place, the channels, what are the services being provided, what are the data being used, and also the application. Okay. So we put everything together using the enterprise architecture approach so that we can actually see how the business are impacted and what changes that needs to be taken place. Okay, so this is an example of the customer, okay, customer journey view. Okay. So if you can quickly just zoom in. Okay. So you can look into the persona. Okay, graduated, is a very gadget person, doesn't have interest in the office hours working, okay, do not own a car, doesn't have a driving license. So we create the persona so that for this particular persona, okay, what are the necessary things that needs to be done to be a Grab, okay, Grab service provider. So starting from you need to prepare the asset or the budget, okay, terms of your financials, and then you apply for a Grab driver, then you perform the operation of the Grab, and then you have the maintenance, and also you end up by terminating or ending the services as a Grab driver. So you have all these channels been taken care. Okay, how actually you get the information, and then you do the application online. Then you need to have a purchase of the cars and also the insurance. Then you need to have the license, and then become the Grab driver. Okay, and these are the services, okay, that's involved. Okay, when you purchase, you have the car transfer ownership. So basically, it comes from the road transport department. Okay. Similarly, if you take a license, you go to the driving license. Okay. So next we look into the capabilities. So for that particular Grab driver services, okay, so there's a driver management capability that's involved, vehicle management, okay, and also the service. That means the person who drives the car, the vehicles that's involved, and also the services. So within the driver, you have the license management and also driving skills management. Vehicle, you have the registration and also the road tax management. And for the service, okay, you might have the road complaint, traffic management, and so on. So for each of these capabilities, we derive what are the resources. Okay, so for instance, the driver management have provided by the road transport department. Okay, there's a role, okay, or a department that actually issues the driver license. Then you have the information about the training and also the license driving testing and also the information on the license itself. Then there's an application that's involved in providing these services. Okay. Similarly, for the service management, it's very much on the Kementerian Kerjaya. Okay, Kerja Raya. We talk about what are the complaints services and also the traffic services. Okay. So if all the data related to the road, the complaint about the road conditions, and also the traffic conditions. Then you have the system that's actually providing. So from here, you actually can see all the relevant capabilities and the resources being used to provide these services. So this is where the enterprise architecture helps the organization in actually relating to the services from the customer journey. Okay, so this is another example for the Petani model. So Petani model has more touch points that they go through. So it's also gives you an idea. In order for you to get some services, there's a lot of interactions, okay, that's taking place with the government agencies. So offhand, you can actually get a sense that wow, there's so many, uh, going back and forth with the government agency or different government agencies to get a particular service. So from there, actually, you can look into how you can actually reduce those interactions so that they can give or get the services at one single interaction, and also look into all the emotions. Okay, the one like the yellow emotion is showing that they are not too happy about the services they are getting, and we can actually do an analysis on all these services they are not very happy about. Okay. So for the Petani modern, they have a more illustrated, a more comprehensive capability. Even they talk about the penyediaan bantuan, yeah, the aid that they are giving. They have the financial aid, they have the aid to do the farming itself. They have the skills, to develop the farmers, and also technology in the farming. So different types of aids that they need to be given, and it comes from different various, section or bagian or agencies within the government. And in coming out with the infrastructure, okay, in the farming areas, okay, they need to look into all these capabilities, the promotional activities for marketing, and also sometimes you need the license and so permit, okay, to run your business, and the marketing, whether it's domestic or going international. So these are the capabilities that's required to actually serve our petani modern, our modern farmers. Okay, so similarly, each of the capabilities here will be represented by the resources. Okay, so for instance, this is the Pengairan's agency or bahagian. Okay, there's a department looking to that. They have this data. and also the system. So this is the beauty about the enterprise architecture linking with the enterprise architecture. So from all these challenges on the customer journey maps, we actually list down all the gaps, okay, all the areas of improvement or opportunities that can be identified to actually look into how we can redesign the services. Okay. So in this case, there's too many forms, okay, there's a limited, application channels, okay, there's too long in the counter services, certain what condition or the criteria are too tight, and many things, okay. And also the what kind of aid they need to have, and also the digital and technology. Okay. So from these activities, actually we come up with what are the possible solution. Okay, identify the cost. Okay, whether it's going to be low cost or some will be on higher cost if you want to improve the services. And we categorize them into some kind of project category or program category, and highlight what is the outcome. So the outcome from too many forms to go simplification using some digital services to reduce or make the application process very simple and smooth. Okay, up to all the flexibility to how to get aid, up to you get the marketing help, and also ultimately you become the modern farming. Okay, this is one of the problems that the government has a lot of funds, but it's not been taken up by the citizens. Okay, so by identifying all these key issues, now the agency actually can target how actually they can actually reach out all these uh, future or potential farmers or young farmers to actually they become more and more modern using the technology and make a good living, okay, a good business that will contribute to their own benefit and also the supply and demand of the uh, farmers' goods, okay, the food industry. So after identifying all these gaps and opportunity, and then you group them into some kind of projects, okay, then you plot them into a risk and business value matrix. Okay. So from here, from all those challenges that we have identified three projects. One is actually to look into the policy. So that means looking to the services needs to tweak some of the policies. Okay, so that's one initiative. Then digital farming is one huge initiative. The size of the circle shows the cost uh, relative to the implementation, and also the promotional activities that needs to be taking place. Okay. So another example, in this case, this Bliawanis, okay, the teenager who wants to actually uh, quit the normal traditional learning into an entrepreneurship kind of career, have identified so many services that can be given to make sure that this teenager will be a very successful contributing citizen in Malaysia. Okay. So these techniques that we use to identify what are the key initiatives, and we prioritize them based on the risk and also the business value. So this will give a sense of the priority of which are the initiatives that can be done, and what takes in terms of the implementation precedence and quick wins and things like that. Okay. So next, from all these services that we now plot in the new target landscape map. Okay, so here we are saying that for the first one of the processes to mencari maklumat berkaitan dengan petani moden, okay, there are new information that needs to be created, like a toolkit for petani moden, and this can be done through a website. Okay, so easily visually, actually, we can see what are the things can be added and how we actually can improve the services. Okay, so similarly, in terms of giving the financial aid, okay, or they identified that they need to have a new system to manage all the grants, okay, that's been given. So when you talk about grants, there's many agencies providing the grant. So that's why when we look at these services, we need to talk to all the other agencies and see how we actually can collaborate and make them part of the ecosystem. Okay, so this is another example. Oh yeah, for the higher education. Okay, and we can say that for the intake for the higher education, it's done through the portal, and now they have increased okay, more and more services to take care of all types of higher education institutes. Okay, so previously it's very much for the public universities, and now with this redesign, they have now included the matrix, the college, polytechnic, college community, and things like that. So things have been added so that they can provide better services, okay, through a one-stop center. If not, the students will be applying to many places, and they'll be, wishing their luck that they'll be hitting one of them. So this kind of service design actually helped with the customer journey map, looking into the key problems and how actually they overcome these problems. Okay, so this is another example. Okay, when you talk about the OKU student, OKU parents, okay, who have a child, Hana 6 years old, has an autism challenge. Okay, so how actually we can ease them, by letting them know that if you're an autism, if you have an autism child, what are the kind of services or the aids or the privileges that is being given, and it goes to their doorstep instead of them needing to find out what can I do with my child, which school can I send them to, what kind of in the future career that they actually can go into, what kind of healthcare or health services that they can be given, and things like that. Okay, so that means once you have a certain situation, the government services now actually reaching up to you, okay, instead of you going and applying here and there. So that is one of the transformation or the service redesign that's taking place when we do the customer journey and using the EA approach. Here we talk about the obesity, okay, situation, where obesity, although it's an issue on the health, but it begins all at the education level itself. So here's where the health ministry and the education ministry need to collaborate, okay, and start the journey from the early child, uh, when the child is at the early stage, to give them the awareness and also keeping track of the uh, the child's uh, health. Okay, so now you can see that there is also measurements when they actually take the child's weight and height to see whether what is the BMI index even from the school. Okay, so that in the future when this child grows up, he will be more healthier, and so that we can reduce the obesity issue, so that it will so here they have also identified they need to have a integrated monitoring system. Okay, and this monitoring system, with the new technology now, actually you can have drones, you can have all these IoTs actually to monitor and then give the real time progress of the projects. So in summary, what we can say is that the customer journey is an excellent tool, okay, for us to engage the business and also the customers and blend them together with the IT people. Okay, so we find that business people feels very easy and very engaged and very active in this kind of sessions. And customer experience are looked into the outside out. Okay, look at the holistic view and from the perspective of the business ecosystem. So it actually helps you to identify the end-to-end services and all the relevant parties that's involved to give the services to the citizens or the recipients. Then using the digital EA, okay, that gives you a structured and a systematic approach to design the target digital services or even the services. And finally, the outcome, the realization of the business, okay, the realization of the customer journey is very much focused on the business value and the benefits outcome. So here, one of the key important thing is to actually have the wow factor, the differentiation of the transformation, whereby previously we apply for the housing. Now those who needs the house is been given to them. Okay, rumah cari kerja, kerja cari orang. In terms of the employability, the placement. When somebody needs some kind of health service, it comes to them. Okay, bantuan cari orang, OKU. Okay, all the grant that it's given to the relevant people. Okay, the scholarships finds the student, and also the bantuan or the kerajaan giving out all these funds and so on to the needy people is given automatically. So that is one of the wow factor that's been identified And slowly we can see some of these things are actually taking place, okay, from this kind of workshops, from the customer journey, and using the enterprise architecture. So moving forward, I can see that we now need to move to another level to look into the holistic view of the government running the business of providing the services throughout all the live events using the technology and so on. Okay, so with that, I end my presentation.